corridors of power. In the corridors of power. In the corridors of power. In the house are games. They told us we should just wait. They told us we should just wait. In the corridors of power. At the top of the hour. People who live in houses like that don't know. Oh. I'm getting hot under the
Konnichiwa, everyone. My name is Rebecca Maria Goldschmidt. I am one of the new podcasters for CounterPunch Radio. So welcome to CounterPunch Radio. I'm here today with Hanin, who's one of the organizers in Tokyo in Japan. And we're going to be discussing Palestine from the Japanese perspective and Palestine solidarity from Japan. So I want to first plug CounterPunch Radio and counterpunch.org, which is a news site that you guys have all been listening to. Also want to plug Counterpunch Plus, which is our special news and special edition articles and extra bonus information that helps keep Counterpunch running. We've been doing a lot of incredible coverage of Palestine for the past 30 years. And so we're really grateful to all of our readers and our listeners. And we just want to keep Counterpunch going as independent left media and continue our coverage of Palestine. So we're going to get started with a couple of introductions to ourselves. And I'm going to have Hanin introduce yourself. Welcome to CounterPunch Radio.
Thank you, Rebecca. Hi, everyone. I'm Hanin Siam, and I'm from Gaza and Lifta, but I was born in Gaza and raised in Tokyo, Japan. I am organizing for Palestine and trying to do as much as I can as an individual to, raise awareness and raise the voice of Palestinians in a place as far as Japan. That being said, the Palestinian community in Japan is quite small. It's also spread out across the different cities. It's not, we're not just in Tokyo. So, we're a very, very small and tiny community, but we are mighty and fierce.
Yeah.
And it's and it's cool because, we're all here doing different things. And some people could be here and are Palestinians and we have no idea because they have different nationalities, but over the last few months we've all been really getting to connect with one another and build a community for Palestinians here in Japan.
Thanks, Hanin. Thanks so much for joining us. And I'll just mention a little bit about myself. My name is Rebecca, and I'm here in Hiroshima as one of the organizers for the Hiroshima Palestine Community Vigil. We're also a Palestine solidarity organization that grew really out of a response to the October 7th attacks and the Gyakusatsu, the ongoing genocide and bombardment of Gaza and the attacks and slow genocide in the West Bank. So Hanin and I, and along with other organizers throughout Japan, have been kind of coordinating as much as we can within our own communities and trying to build more networks of solidarity throughout Japan as well. So this is kind of the first time we've really had to sit down and talk and reflect just in preparing for this and in the last 6 months of just really intense organizing. And of course, Hanin dealing with family issues and other kinds of stuff coming up around community, me as well. I'm a Jewish American. I'm also Filipino, so kind of dealing with, the Zionist community and the anti-Zionist Jewish community. And so we're kind of at a pretty interesting intersection as, women of color, as organizers, as foreign people living in Japan, who aren't
Right.
necessarily, Japanese people. And so, yeah, I'm looking forward to our conversation right now as to what we can discuss around this experience and how we've been trying our best, really, to support Palestine. So I'm wondering, Hanin, if you could talk a little bit about kind of where Japan has historically been in terms of supporting Palestine and what's happening now. You can kind of speak maybe from like a higher kind of political level or like a
Hmm.
nation to nation level and or
Hmm.
community wise too.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's Japan's situation is quite unique, and I feel like Japan's, acceptance and recognition of Palestine is really crucial and plays such a big role, which is why I decided to be in Japan during this time and raising awareness here. Because, if you look at how Japan has treated Palestine over the last decades, Japan's always been a friend to Palestine. That's really what we say. Japan has always supported Palestine financially and in a humanitarian way and with development. We even have a neighborhood in Khan Yunis where my grandparents are from, called the Japanese neighborhood. And
Mm.
that's because Japan helped build the neighborhood. And we also have, uh, a sort of love for Japan in Gaza as well. I went to a Catholic school in Gaza in first grade, and it was built by Japan, by the Japanese government. So, for me, I've always had this connection with Japan, and Japan, even way before I existed, has always supported Palestine in these ways. But when we talk about politics and, you know, Japan's decision making is America's or the West's decision making, let's say. So, although they really care for Palestine, they've always helped and supported, and they really want to recognize Palestine as well as a state. Um, they haven't recognized Palestine, and they haven't been able to take that official step politically to, really give us that green light. And, it's because of the West and because of that, that influence. So they're kind of in this in between where they really want to support Palestine, recognize Palestine and their independence, but at the same time, because of, political pressure, they try to just stay more neutral, will support financially with development, and that's about it. They also obviously have trade relations with Israel and business with Israel. So for them, it makes the most sense to just be neutral and try to help both sides. That's kind of their stance, let's say. Um, it's a little bit sad because I feel like Japan kind of views Palestine as a charity case. When you look at where Japan establishes their businesses in Palestine slash Israel, it's all in Israel. So any of their like, offices are in Israel. They don't really do much in Palestine besides, humanitarian NGO NPO support. That's it. So that's the frustrating part. We want to try to get Japan to a place where they can really recognize Palestine as a state officially. That's, I think, one of the goals for us as a community and as a movement, and also be able to, allow Palestine to establish itself as a country and as a, yeah, kind of just help it flourish the business and its trading. And Japan could do that as well. But for now, because of the situation, obviously they don't, and they choose to just maintain neutrality and do business with Israel, and that's it, which is awful and really, really needs to change. And I think we can slowly get them there. It's just gonna take a lot of time and persistence. Yeah, that's kind of more the political aspect of things, I would say.
Yeah, I just was reading about the UN vote I think it was last week or
Hmm.
the week before,
Hmm.
who in the UN out of those, I think there were 15 or 18 countries that voted, or 20 or so. And Japan was one of those hands up on the vote, So I think
Yep.
it's always had that history of support. And unfortunately, and this kind of feeds into our next conversation just about what we've done in Japan, but how
Hmm.
Japanese business and the Japanese Ministry of Defense is also encouraging manufacturers to be in business with Israel, and specifically
Yep.
Israeli weapons manufacturing. So
Hmm.
maybe we can talk a little bit about the Itochu Elbit Systems contract. I know that was like probably the biggest news coming out of Japan in terms
Hmm.
of solidarity with Palestine and how this is affecting Japanese trade, business, foreign relations with Israel. And also how, the community, like you're saying, community engagement and community organizing could be was, is, and could be effective in pushing Japan to be more supportive of Palestine, and especially with, the more that dealing with Israel becomes just a criminal, more and more criminal,
Hmm. Hmm.
how
Hmm.
Japan's support for Palestine could change in the next, coming years. So yeah, maybe you want to share a little bit about what you guys have done in Tokyo in general, but we can just start with Itochu and the campaign to cancel the contract
Yeah.
with Albit Systems.
Yeah. I think Itochu is one of the best, use cases and examples. Obviously, because it succeeded and we got a result out of it. So we saw the possibility for businesses to divest and to move away from Israel. So definitely probably one of the most important things that we've done. But so the case with Itochu, the Mainichi Shimbun reported that Itochu and NAS, Nippon Aircraft Supply, did this memorandum with Elbit Systems in March 2023. And this guy from Najat, which is the network against Japan arms trade, he found that article and he started a campaign against it. So that was actually before October. And then after October 7th, everybody thought, okay, we really have to do something about this now, especially with all the shut Elbit down actions that were happening all over the world. AMO Palestine, which is a Japanese Students and Youth for Palestine organization, they created a petition for against Itochu to raise awareness about this huge issue. The fact that um, Itochu and NAS have signed a memorandum to trade with Elbit Systems, which is Israeli defense and manufacturing company. So literally funding the genocide that's happening now. Um, and it was very important to be able to petition in order to raise awareness in Japan, because people had no idea. People genuinely had no idea about this. And once the petition started spreading, we got over 25,000 signatures. And people started protesting. You guys were protesting in Hiroshima. We were protesting here outside their offices. People protesting in Canada. So we really kind of were able to put that pressure, I feel, on Itochu, and have them feel like what they're doing is against the ethics that they define in their business, because they even have statements. Japanese companies, most of them have these statements about doing ethical, moral, sustainable business, and funding a genocide.
Doesn't
So
fit.
yeah, it doesn't fit that criteria at all. And not even a week went by where we didn't try to disturb them in some way. And yeah, after um a few, I don't know, I feel like it was a few weeks, maybe a few months. Times are hard for me in my head right now. They finally came out and said we'll cut ties with Itochu. They did cite the ICJ hearing, but I mean, I'm 100% sure having all these people standing outside their offices, outside their recruitment events where they're trying to get students because they're a big company in Japan, that definitely puts some pressure on them and their reputation, which ultimately they don't want it to be damaged. And I think it's using that strategy with other companies and other politicians that might really help us get there in Japan, because people don't want to have this reputation, unlike other places where they probably wouldn't care as much for having such a reputation.
Yeah, I think that kind of public shaming is actually, like that's how a lot of
Yep.
things happen in Japan,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
just, yeah, making sure that everybody knows. And, that was something
Hmm.
that I think all of the protests, I want to give a shout out to the folks in Nagoya too, who were also
Hmm.
they're loud standing Nagoya,
Yeah.
the organizers there really consistently just like being really fucking loud in front
Hmm.
of these
Yeah.
offices. And we don't have, like Palestine Action in England and in other places have a lot more of a kind of focus on smashing windows and vandalizing and throwing red
Yeah.
paint on things, and we love that, we love to see that. But in Japan it's just not going to happen, and going to
No.
jail in Japan is very, 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 very bad. And no one's going to risk
Yes.
going to jail because of the reputation, because of the damage to people's careers and studies and everything that takes. So really the consistency of the Itochu protests and the loudness
Mm.
and just and Nippon Aircraft Supply too, because they were all kind of in contract together.
Yeah.
I think that was really effective. And also in Indonesia and Malaysia, they had their boycott of Family Mart, which is a
Yeah.
convenience store. So we had, I think it's important that we recognize that Japan and Indonesia and Malaysia all at the same time
100%.
were like hammering at Itochu.
Hmm.
And it was
Yeah.
really because of that. Plus, what they wanted to, publicly say was, oh, the ICJ ruling, we're going to pull out because this wasn't, we can't be
Hmm.
on the wrong side or whatever. And then they also revealed that, the Ministry of Defense, like I was mentioning earlier, where had recommended and kind of pressured them into taking these
Yeah.
contracts. So that's the
Yeah.
other thing with
That's true.
Japan, is that in the US kind of led push to militarize Japan and to emphasize
Hmm.
the kind of potential war with China over Taiwan, the militarization of the quote unquote Indo-Pacific, what's kind of the US
Yeah.
military terminology for this region, for the Asian region, is also, these contracts with Israel are part of that. So I always try to bring that back up
100%.
as well. It's just
Hmm.
what's happening in Palestine and the weapons testing and the creation and the design. All of that is
Yeah.
also being purchased by countries in Asia, by,
Hmm.
by
Hmm.
Japan, who's
Yeah.
gonna buy Israeli drones and stuff like that. So
Hmm.
in order to connect it further for everyone, like what's happening with the build up towards war in Asia is that these contracts and these dealings between Israel and Japan have been strengthened over the past couple of years. And now,
Hmm.
we're at this point where we're like, wait, we actually need to kind of dismantle that before it continues. But it makes
Yeah.
it very difficult for Japan to um, say no because of their nuclear umbrella, the coverage that the United States
Hmm.
provides for them in terms of conflict in the
100%.
rest of Asia. So just give people a kind of a broader context of why does Japan need to deal with Elbit systems, and that's kind of the
Yeah.
reason.
Yeah.
So
100%.
besides the awesome work of shutting down Itochu and Elbit and Nippon Aircraft Supply, what else have you guys been up to in Tokyo? Do you want to share a little bit more about the different, many different facets of the organizing work that you're doing over there?
Yeah, absolutely.
Tokyo.
Tokyo, by the way, when I say like any for example, like with the Itochu outcome, we talk about Japan, we talk about Tokyo and the things that we've done, because obviously those are the things that we know and the things that we've been focused on. But when it comes to any, decision and outcome, and so any sort of success, let's say, it's definitely the work of so many different people all over the world, things that we don't even know about, probably letters that were sent we don't know about, things that are so many things happening behind the scenes.
Mm,
So it's
mm,
not
mm,
like there's
mm,
really like one person or one community or anything. It's like, because there's so much going on, there's so much collective effort.
mm,
This
mm.
is why we're able to get there. So whenever we say like Tokyo or Japan or whatever, it's definitely inclusive of like everything that's happening behind the scenes that we're just like, we fail to mention, or we don't have time to talk about all those things. So but yeah, in general, I mean, in Tokyo, the way we've gone about things, I mean, we've all just met each other within the last 7 months. I would just like to note that, this community is brand new. We've
Mm.
all just met each other, and
Wow,
found
yeah.
each other, which has been amazing. It's been amazing, and it's given all of us hope, because we're in a place where we don't have 300,000 people protest. We don't have like this huge feeling of like we're all normal and we're all collectively feeling this like rage. No, we're in a place where, life is very normal. Everyone's going about their day, and you're the odd one out who's feeling furious and outraged, and you want to,
Ugh.
break things and do things. Uh, so this community has really been amazing, and we improve every single day our strategy and how we go about things. But in general, when we started really thinking about events and protests and how to best raise awareness about Palestine, we kind of split it up in three ways. So the public, general audience, the public Japanese society, and then we have also the government, the political side of things, and then we also have corporations, the business side of things. And those are the kind of three, let's say, targets when we come to plan actions, where to focus, because all of those need focus. And luckily, we have enough people here in Tokyo, because it's a major city, to be able to kind of spread our resources and target, corporations and politicians and the general, the general mass as well. So that's been kind of the way we've thought about things. And then we break it down. Okay, when we choose, like when we're discussing corporations, we've definitely the most complicit. There's so many corporations that are complicit, but when we thought about it, we thought, military and arms. I mean, that's the things that are killing Palestinians right now, that they're
Yeah.
being used and tested on Palestinians now. So that's kind of the most important thing to try and have Japan move away from in any way, and for companies to divest and move away from. So we focused on like Itochu and NAS, and now FANUC. We have a campaign against FANUC, which is a lot harder, because um, we can't call for a boycott of FANUC like Itochu with Family Mart. Also, FANUC is just had, yeah, it's complex. The robots that they make to go and then make these, these weapons, etc. So that's their whole business model. It's not like
Mm.
Itochu. So it's a different ball game, but we really hope we can pressure these, companies as much as possible to divest, and that's military is really the number one. Obviously, we also try to spread information about BDS in Japan. That's not a very known thing either, but we do our best to create protests and campaigns and flyers around BDS, so people can learn more about it. Protests near places like that have a Starbucks and a McDonald's and a Subway and all the
Mhm,
complicit
mhm, mhm.
companies in one place. Lucky for us.
Lucky you're in Tokyo, where there is a corner that
Yeah,
has all of those gigantic
exactly. So we just
corporate food chains.
shame, like
Nice, nice.
360 shame.
Oh man.
But yeah, so the corporations, and then also the government, a lot of actions outside MOFA, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. you know, especially with the push for reinstating UNRWA funding. We were out there every day in March, every single day in March. And then the general mass, we do protests like at least one every week, maybe one, two big ones every month. And then we have events like workshops and bazaars and film screenings every now and then as well. So we're just doing as much as we can to
Yeah.
really spread out awareness for Palestine. As much as we would like to just go to Fanuc and destroy their factory, we can't do that in Japan. That is one huge, like, I think, you know, obstacle for us here is um, those kinds of actions would actually damage the reputation of the cause in
Mhm.
Japan, and you know, in the perspective of the society here. Those kinds of things would be seen as aggressive and seen as a disruptive, like very, very disrupting, and just it just completely destroys the harmony and the peace, and they would look at us in a negative view. And so we've that's why we haven't taken those steps, honestly. And we try to maintain this idea of meeting Palestine through a lens of culture or emotion or art or protests as well, but still different outlets to meet Palestine. Um, we have to cater for the audience, sadly.
Hmm. Well, I mean, I think that really speaks to, just how Japanese people respond to protest movement. The
Mm,
history of
mhm,
protest movement in Japan has historically been violent.
mm,
If we're talking about the student movements in the 50s, 60s, 70s,
yeah,
80s, there was a lot of infighting and violence in the New Left movements that caused a
mhm,
lot of disharmony, despite the fact
right,
that, there were huge student movements. People can go look back at, you know, what happened with the airport protests in Tokyo, outside of Tokyo, or when the
mhm,
um uh I'm trying to think of what it's called now. Basically, Ampo, the Ampel
mm,
movement, which was like trying to also detach American imperialist
mhm,
kind of controlled relations with Japan. Huge student movements that were extremely looked down upon by Japanese society, at least
of course,
historically speaking. And now student movements are very small, if not non-existent. They still exist. I want to just plug the fact that there are students who are still resisting and still following in those
yeah,
lines, historical lines, but they're small, and they are yeah, criminalized and delegitimized by Japanese society, unfortunately. So when we're
mhm,
talking about working with young people or other Japanese people, other movement leaders and other movement groups in Japan, there's much more of an kind of underground civic movement of people connecting to each other and supporting each other, the anti-base
yeah,
movement, the anti-nuclear movement, the women's movement. We're going to talk a little bit more of that about that a little bit later in terms of intersectionality. But I think
mhm,
that in talking about Palestine, having it have any connection with violence, I think is very or at least making sure that people who support Palestine are not seen as just automatically supporting terrorism. Like that's the kind of
yeah,
leap that happens in people's minds, at least especially in the United States where I'm from. But in Japan, we don't have that association so deeply ingrained in people's minds. Most people don't really know that much about Palestine. They don't really know where it
that's true.
is, right? They don't
No,
kind of
no,
know the situation. So we're kind of in a position where we're actually building a consciousness and building an
yeah,
image of what is Palestine, who are Palestinian
exactly.
people. And I think we actually are at a benefit in that sense because we don't have to fight so hard against like this dehumanization and this kind of like,
Indoctrination.
yeah, the indoctrination of
Yeah,
the criminal Palestinian. It's so messed up that we have to do that in other contexts, but we
Yeah.
do kind of have the benefit of that kind of, I don't know what to call it, a blank slate, like in the mind of
Yeah.
Japanese people. So I think you guys have done such an amazing job of really, setting the example of how the arts and culture and uplifting
Hmm.
Palestinian voices, poetry, performance, the embroidery, tattoos, all of this kinds of
Yeah.
cultural issues and cultural phenomena that is so beautiful that Japanese people love to know that about other countries too. They really
Hmm.
enjoy learning about other
Exactly.
places. They are really, yeah, just curious about the rest of the
Hmm.
world. And so I think,
Yeah.
yeah, that's just been a very successful, I think, part of what you
Hmm.
guys have done in Tokyo, which, by the way, I have to say, Tokyo is the biggest city in the world. I just want to say that, like people forget, like Tokyo's fucking huge. And when you go there, if you've ever been there, it's an overwhelming place because you can just feel how many
Yeah.
people are there. It's nonstop. It's
That's
going
so true.
24 hours. Like people are like, New York is 24 hours. And it's like, no, you got to go to Tokyo. And so
That's
just
so
want to
true.
like mention that you guys just being at Shinjuku Station or at these really big cross sections of the city with literally millions of people walking by every day or whatever, every week, and if flying the Palestinian flag, chanting, speaking. I mean, it's a very, very powerful image to have that happening in the middle of
Mm.
all the billboards and all of the neon and all the workers.
All
Um,
the sound.
and
Yeah.
the sounds, so yeah, I'm just gonna give you guys some more props for just being able to have the fortitude to do that kind of work in that kind of environment
Mm.
is also really amazing. I mean, in Hiroshima, we're in a different scenario. We're standing in front of the atomic bomb dome, so we have a different kind of backdrop, we have a different symbolism, we have a different
Definitely.
image that we're working with, and we're technically on a mass grave. We're at the site of the
Yeah.
epicenter of the atomic weapon, so we have a very different scenario. It's a lot more quiet and peaceful, and people are walking by through a park. They're in a different mindset, but to be holding it down for Palestine in the middle of Tokyo is like, yeah, you guys are hardcore. So just want to say that.
We gotta
um
we gotta do it. We gotta do it. I mean, I give you guys props too because it's not easy in smaller cities either where the community is much smaller, the support, the resources. So yeah, props to you guys too for sure. And we just gotta do it,
we just got to
to
do
have
it.
no choice.
And I mean, I know there was that one video of the guy circulating, the one dude in Tokyo. Did you meet him?
Yeah,
The
yeah, yeah.
solo
Furusawa-san,
bro.
yeah.
本当にありがとうございます。何々さん. I'm not sure his name, but just want to shout out.
Furusawa-san,
あ、
Furusawa
古澤さん。
Yusuke.
古澤祐介さ
Yeah.
ん、本当にありがとうございます。Like,
ありがとうござい
seriously,
ます。
thank you to you, my friend, for being out there solo. I mean, again, just speaking to the kind of shame factor and the public
Mhm,
and community pressure that exists in Japan. People are
mhm.
not usually used to people kind of stepping out of the box or stepping out of the kind of general community sense of feeling and
Mhm.
being. And so to do something so brave as to stand alone in the train station with a sign that says "Stop the Genocide," I mean, that is a powerful action in Japan. And I think in a lot of contexts, in the American context, in the European context, it's like normal and easy for people to protest. It's totally part of
Yeah,
our cultures. It's
yeah.
and not just Europe and other parts of Asia too, but in Japan specifically, we just have to, let the listeners know too that it's a very big, yeah, it's a big statement and it's a big risk.
Mhm.
A lot of people
Yeah.
cannot be in public stating their political,
Yeah.
thoughts, their political positionalities. And so, yeah, we are very grateful to the people of Japan who have shown up. It's like amazing
Mhm.
sometimes when I think back at like all the different people from all the different backgrounds of Japan who have been willing to take their time and spend their money to travel to get to Tokyo, to get to Hiroshima, to stand in
Yeah.
solidarity. It's a beautiful thing. So maybe we could talk a little bit more just about, yeah, like how have people reacted to us, maybe from the outside looking in, and then also how the Japanese community that does support Palestine, like what are they thinking? And of course, this is from our perspectives, but yeah, maybe you could comment a little bit about, yeah, what are the observations you've had in terms of how people are responding to what you guys are doing?
Yeah, I mean, I think we have different kinds of reactions. Of course, we're gonna get all sorts of reactions. We're gonna get some people who are curious and support and join and come and ask questions, and they see something and it stands out to them. Like they see a protest and it really like they want to understand what it's about. But then we also do have a lot of people that see our protest and look the other way and keep walking, or don't even see our protest to begin with, because we've just become so, like, I don't know, it's just they just walk and they're so wired into their whatever they're doing or wherever they're going, that they don't even take a second to just you know tune out and like actually listen to what we're saying, and try to understand what's the message here, what's happening here. No, they just don't even see us at all. I think some people also see us and think like, oh, these are some like, aggressive, like extreme people
Mm,
doing
mhm,
extreme people things, because it's
mhm.
not normal to protest, and it's not normal to chant in the middle of the street and
Mhm,
do it with so much passion like we do it here.
mhm,
So I feel like people can also give us those kinds of, weird looks, especially that we do have a lot of foreigners, since we are in Tokyo,
mhm.
that come out to our protests. So some people might even look at us and think, oh, like these foreigners are coming here and saying these things. And especially if we chant in English or Arabic, which we do at protests sometimes too, it's like,
Mm, mm, mm.
some people can take that in a positive or negative way. So we kind of have all these sorts of different reactions to work with. And also Japan is interesting because of the age and the age gap, really. I mean, the average age and population is quite old in Japan, right?
Mm. Yes,
But
yes.
there's not as much youth as well, and the youth here are not as active as we said. Like, I mean, there are definitely a lot of there are students doing their things for sure,
Mhm.
but in general, comparing to other countries and other places, there's no student unions and those kinds of things that you would
Right, right.
expect would be ready to mobilize and do something for Palestine or any other injustice around this world. And it was interesting because for us organizers, we're really trying to find ways of engaging with all these people and finding ways to connect with the older generation who have a history of activism. A
Mhm,
lot of
mhm.
them were very involved, and also connect with the youth and how to get them involved in
Mm,
protest culture. And I was just curious, so I just looked it up one day, and there was this article that was saying, comparing different countries, and it was saying how the youth in Japan ranks the lowest in discussing politics with their friends and their families and their communities in general.
mhm, mhm.
And that's because, it's just this idea of kind of, I don't want to say conforming to the normal belief, but just like this idea of like peace and harmony and believing what the common society and everyone around you believes and talks about. And also talking about politics. And although Palestine is not even a political issue, but talking about these sorts of injustices can bring upon tension and bring upon disagreements and confrontations. And I mean, we know Japan, like that's not a thing that they
Not
would be
into the
very happy to do.
confrontations.
No, not at all, not at all. And the study also was showing how people in Japan view protests, the youth view protests as more of a disruptance, actually more than
Mm,
the older generation. The older generation, because they've been involved in activism before, and I mean,
mm,
Japan had a lot more protests and activism in the 70s, and it's been decreasing
mm,
since. So, the older generation has that experience, but the youth don't have that exposure and don't have that experience, and they don't believe that a protest would change things and would bring about any social change. And it's interesting because, I feel like history has shown us how social change and the people have almost always brought upon change in society.
Mhm.
And now it's up to us to kind of get that message delivered to the youth to show them that no, you attending a protest and speaking up and taking action could lead to, a change in the political decision making in your country. And that's what we're trying to do and focus on now with the youth especially. But yeah, all sorts of reactions, honestly, Rebecca, and Zionists here and there too. We get our
Oh boy.
occasional tourists. We had one Zionist that went trending, like I don't know how
Oh
many
no.
million followers I mean million views on Twitter and Instagram. The Zionist went crazy in Shibuya, and since then it's only increased every week. We only have more and more Zionists appearing with like a way more aggressive attitude than before, and a lot more
Mm,
anger and rage.
mm,
So that's been another thing we've been dealing with, but now we're like working with a security like team in Australia. They're helping us, giving us their experience in
yes.
protests because they have a way more deeper history with protests and dealing with aggressors than we do. So they've been,
Mhm.
huge help for that. But yeah, you got all these different factors to play with in
Got
Japan, which makes it
everybody.
challenging and interesting. And then of course you have Japanese nationalists too, the
Mm,
right-wing nationalists as well. They come,
mhm.
and especially when they see us foreigners, it's for us, us being here is already a problem. So us being here and then talking
Mm,
about an issue of a place that's not Japan, it's to them it's like it's nonsense. Like how could this be possible?
mm,
So yeah,
mhm.
we're kind of dealing with all those reactions, all those groups and people. But so I mean, we're still here, so so far so good.
I mean, it's like if you are in Shinjuku, you're gonna get the cross section of everybody, Shibuya,
Uh-huh.
you're getting a
Mm-hmm.
cross section of the whole city of just
100%.
crossing, crossing, crossing. So it does, you can see really how different people's opinions are. And then, the people who do show up consistently, those are different kind of folks too. So even in
Yeah.
Hiroshima, we had a same kind of influx of during spring break, a lot of angry Zionist folks who were also very aggressive. And I think a lot of people have seen, worldwide. We were both just talking about UCLA last night at the encampment that was
Mm-hmm.
attacked by a gang of 150 Zionists who were throwing fireworks into the encampment, just very aggressive. And I when I was telling our crew here in Hiroshima, I was like, we need to not be engaging. We need to like not
Yep.
let these people instigate us into response because
Mm-hmm.
that's feeding into their ego. They just want to rile you up,
100%.
basically. And so
100%.
it's really important that we got trained in that way and had our martial training, have our security trainings. All protest movements have some kind of security system built in, but here
Yeah.
in Japan it's kind of like no one expects violence to incur, to any
Mm-mm.
any violence to happen on the street. That would just never happen. There would never be even words exchanged
Mm-mm.
loudly in public. It's very, very
Mm-mm.
taboo and very, very just unheard of. And so
Yeah.
for our people to be standing peacefully with signs in the Peace Park in front of the atomic bomb dome, and to have, Israelis coming up to us and yelling in our faces and stomping their feet and threatening us. It's very, very disturbing to just the community
Mm.
itself and to individuals and
Right.
to just the vibe of Japan in general. And obviously those
Mm-hmm.
people don't know that and they don't really care because they're just going off on their own trip about how Palestine doesn't exist and blah blah blah. But I think, having to get to also kind of like explain this to Japanese people has also
Yeah.
just been challenging to get people to understand
Mm-hmm.
that the passion level is high for everyone all over
So
the
true.
world around what's happening in Palestine, and that we also need to be able to protect ourselves and protect, just the work that we're doing from that kind of
Yeah.
violence, which no one here would expect to happen in the first place. So that's been a challenge, I know, for pretty much, I mean, any community that has tourists moving through it.
Yeah.
I know Tokyo and
And the police
Hiroshima.
doesn't help.
Right. And the police, yeah, the police doesn't help.
I mean, they don't harm, but they don't help either, you know? They're
Yeah,
just
they're
kind
not
of
gonna
like,
back you up, and they're not gonna help
yeah, they're
you.
just gonna kind of, exactly, we're
Mm,
kind of looking away kind of thing. And I mean, in one way, we're lucky because we don't have police brutality. We don't see this,
mm,
we don't
mm,
have those issues that they do, that those videos that we've seen coming out of Berlin and now
mm.
all over campuses in the United States. Like that's
Yes.
absolutely insane. So the fact that we don't have that is a huge blessing to
Mm,
us and
mm,
and to the community, especially in a place where we are already so few.
mm,
So not
mm,
making sure that there's no risk to people's safety has helped us get more people out there. I think if there was also a
totally.
risk for people's safety on top of the environment that we're in, nobody would come anymore to the, like no one would attend the
Mm,
protest here. So
mm, mm,
the
mm,
fact that it's like safe, the police don't harm, don't help, but also try to restrict and silence
mm.
and make our protests look
Control.
small or
Mhm,
controlled, like
mm,
very regulated. I mean, that's obviously the biggest obstacle with dealing with the police. But, other than that, like, um, we're okay. But that's why we need our own security staff because we
mm,
don't have
mm,
somebody to back us up. If a Zionist walks in, the police is not going to come and, move them away.
mhm,
So
mhm,
it has to be us. It has to be us. And we have to be trained and ready for it too.
mm. Yeah, I wanted to mention too, just about the youth issue. In Japan, there are so
Mm,
many, like you said, there's so much, such a larger older population that in
mhm.
terms of voting, even there's not even enough young people. If all the
No,
young people in Japan voted, their vote actually wouldn't even matter because there's so many more older people that have a heavier weight in terms of the numbers. So most young people are pretty apathetic about politics. And
yeah,
it's not just because their voice, quote unquote, doesn't matter, but it's also because of a very kind of also controlled by the police and the government, kind of like tailoring um of just kind of demonizing the student movement, kind of playing
right.
videos of the
Hmm.
student movement as being aggressive and violent and too crazy, extremists, like you're saying, which, there was a lot of violence and there was a lot of extremism in the movements, but it
Hmm.
also, by eliminating the student governments at schools as a result of the student movements, the
Right.
Japanese government eliminated student governments at universities, there's no real way for people to organize on campuses anymore. I mean, you can still have like a
Mm,
circle or a small group, but you don't have a kind of like voting
yeah,
system that
right.
people that were the methods that which people were using to organize within the universities.
Mm,
So even the Zengakuren that's organizing now is like much smaller and much more controlled than it was back in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s.
right,
So
right.
I think there's that element too, is that not
Hmm.
only have the youth been kind of trained like to not believe that protest works, one, they don't have a kind of streamlined, easy way to organize.
That's
And
true.
and then
Yeah,
of course, so societally, it doesn't, there's no benefit really for people to organize
yeah,
because it just kind of makes you look bad. And
yeah.
most people, when I tell them that I'm going to a protest or I'm going to a demonstration or I stand in front of the dome every single day, young people and my peers and other students are like, oh, that's like really intense. And they either don't want to have anything to do with it or they're maybe a little bit interested. A few people will come out, but they're not really sustained. I think Tokyo's a little
Mm,
bit different. You guys have more of a sustained kind of group. Students have been organizing themselves into groups, but I'm not really familiar with that many other Palestine solidarity specific student groups in Japan. I think there are
yeah.
people who are organizing for other stuff. And then there's something else I wanted to mention. Oh, yeah, I think when we do our demonstrations and we see, you can see people paying attention to you. You're walking down the street chanting, you got signs, like
Mm-hmm.
you're wearing whatever, people are wearing keffiyeh, and you can see young people um, paying attention, filming it,
Mm-hmm.
but then also being like, quiet, 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 which means like scary. Like they're
Mm.
scared. They're actually kind of threatened by a group of people walking down the street in that way. And some students, like we've had this happen a couple of times, and I think this has happened to you guys too, where like they're so hyped on just like the rowdiness of it that they'll
Yeah.
also they might just jump in as a kind of way to like fuck with you and just to kind of
Yes.
like
Yes.
they're
All
basically
the time.
trolling, like live
They're
trolling.
trolling. Yes. Yes. We get that all the time, especially when there's like some sort of beat or rhythm involved. Like they have to come
Mm-mm.
and just like do something,
Shake
and
it up.
like they come and laugh and they think it's like this is fun and this is like, and I'm like, for me, I'm like, do they know and they're just trolling, or do they not know and they're just being dumb and they're just
Right.
naive? I don't know. Like I really don't
It's a
understand
combination.
sometimes what it is. Yeah, it could be a combination also, but definitely we have those reactions for sure.
Yeah, that's always the funniest to me. And then that's happened to us, and I'm like, they don't know what you're actually chanting, so they're kind of trying to chant along, but they don't know. And I was like, do you know
That's
about
so true.
Palestine? And they're like, what's that? So like that
Hmm.
level of kind of understanding, it's just such an interesting place to be kind of, trying to activate young people. Like we're seeing from here all the stories, the feeds, the reels,
Hmm.
everything, all the footage that's coming out of Columbia. I shout out to Columbia University students, shout out to NYU,
Yeah,
whatever, all
shout
those
out.
students, shout out to you guys, because it's not easy for everyone all over the world to be doing that. And
Hmm.
I hope that Japanese students are paying attention. Maybe you want to talk a little bit briefly about Todai, Tokyo University, if you want
Yeah.
to plug them, what they're up to. We also have a camp that was, I think, or at least an event going on at Waseda, which is also a Tokyo
Hmm.
university.
Yeah,
I think there are going to be some other camps set up too throughout Japan. So maybe you want to
definitely.
mention that, plug those guys for a second.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, obviously we all saw how the student encampment spread all around the states, and honestly I was curious to see when and if it would reach Japan,
Mm,
and I wasn't sure like how quickly people would mobilize here. And now I see there's like 139 schools and counting worldwide, which is amazing.
nice.
But Japan was one of the first around this region that decided to also, the students at University of Tokyo decided to start this encampment. And actually, it was just one student. Welcome to Japan. Everything starts with one person, and it
Yes.
slowly grows, slow and steady.
一人で、just one.
一人で、一人で。そうそうそう、一人で。
いいね。
And yeah, the student, he felt like he wanted to express his solidarity with people in Palestine, and with the students in Colombia, and all over the states. And he just decided to pitch up a tent at the Komaba campus and just camp. And that's what he did. And he posted a
Nice.
picture on Twitter and said, I'm starting an encampment for Gaza, and in solidarity with the students of Colombia. And the next day, two students joined him during the day, and that's when I was actually able to meet them for the first time. And I spoke with them about, University of Tokyo, their complicity with Israel, what's going on, what are the details there. They're kind of finalizing the demand letter right now, but many universities in Japan have partnerships with Israeli institutions or
Mhm.
Israeli professors, or either have some sort of partnership programs. For Tokyo University, the first thing that I learned when I got to the campus and I decided to just Google, to see what connections there could be. I saw that they did like an Israel week in 2021
Mm,
on that campus, actually, it was
mm,
like a research design project thing. And then 2022, they did an Israel month. And
mm.
then and then I didn't see anything for 2023, but I was like, would it be Israeli gear 2023? Like, what were they planning there, you know? And
Oh my gosh.
yeah, clearly they're complicit and there's partnerships there. And so they've now like writing this similar demands to US universities to divest, disclose, pledge, protect, these kinds of similar things. And I left that day. That night, there was I think around 22 people that had joined. So it like
Awesome.
quickly grew
Awesome.
among the students. And then they just finalized some things. The funny part is like the university asked about it, and one of the people who had joined initially spoke with the university and told them like, you know, what's happening and everything. And the university was kind of like, okay, sure, like go for it. But if this gets out of hand, then we might have to intervene. But don't worry, like we won't send police on you. Like we'll come and tell you like to have a discussion beforehand. Like if something gets out of hand, which is I don't know
All
if that's
right.
the most Japan thing ever, but that was kind of how the university approached it. And I don't know,
Mhm.
maybe I kind of feel like a part of it is they don't feel very threatened by the like small size of it. Maybe, maybe if this grows and more students start to camp, they will start to feel like, okay, maybe we need to control this. But
Mhm.
for now, they've kind of been okay with things, and I hope once they submit the demands that the university will comply. And I'm kind of hoping for the same strategy that you know these Japanese corporations and institutions don't want to have such a negative reputation.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm kind of hoping we can hold that against them and
Mm.
get them to divest. And yeah, so these students are really working hard. And there's some students at Waseda University. They formed a group called the Watermelon Alliance, and I think that's like the first
Kawaii.
student kind of group themed, like it's actually centered around Palestine,
Mm,
that
mm.
started at Waseda. And Waseda is very complicit with Israel, major partnership program with Israel. So the students there are trying to do things, protests, and I don't know, hopefully maybe an encampment as well. I'm not quite sure. But yeah, it's the students are, you know, slowly speaking up as much as they can. And major respect and kudos to them because they're working
Mm,
in
mm.
institutions where, again, they're the weirdo extremist,
Yeah.
somebody who's feels like, you know, so many emotions, whereas
Yeah.
everybody else is just living life very normally. So yeah, major respect to them.
Yeah, respect to Tokyo Todai. Arigatou gozaimasu. Respect to you guys and all of any young person in Japan
Hmm.
and we have high school students even who
Yeah.
have done actions or who are organizing. I know we've been just mentioning how there aren't that many, but I think we can flip it and say there are some and they are doing stuff. And I think it's
Yes.
important, like we don't want to downplay the importance of every single student, youth
100%.
voice in Japan because
Yeah.
specifically because of how freaking difficult it is to do that
Mhm.
here. You're not gonna get a wave of students in the way that you had immediate support on Columbia
Mm.
University campus.
Right.
You might not even get a wave of professors supporting them, but you will
Actually,
see. Or
um,
are there, do they
a
have
small
some? Do we
thing.
have some?
Actually, an interesting thing is a professor the second day of the encampment came by and gave them a tent,
Oh,
but
いいね。
told them told them like they would rather stay like anonymous. So
Mm,
again,
mm.
it's this
Right,
like
right, right.
it's this in between of like people feel the weight of what's happening in Gaza and Palestine, but at the same time still too shy, too hazukashi to like really
Mm,
speak up
mm,
and put themselves out there because we are in an environment where it is not normal to do such a thing.
mm,
So
mm.
but it was cool to see that they do have some professors that are willing to support and back them, just might have to be in a less public
Mm, mm,
way,
mm.
let's say. And same with the students that walk by, like I feel like they have this, like they're curious and they look, but to take that step to approach, to ask,
Mm,
to
mm.
just get that conversation going takes a lot more than it would in other places, I feel. So like today I was standing there at the encampment, and these students were just like looking, and it's as if they wanted someone to be like dozo, and so I just went and was like dozo dozo, like, and they just came in and they started talking to the other students. So it's just like they
Nice.
almost need that push to be like, come, like, we won't bite, we're
そうそう
friendly,
そう。
we also want peace, but like
ね、
liberation first,
ね。
and yeah, it's just
Yeah, I must say, two of our core members in Hiroshima are also professors.
Mm,
And so that they have been some of the most dedicated and staunchest supporters of what we've been doing, and really the
right.
backbone of what we've been doing in Hiroshima in terms of our nightly vigil, just being there every single night in front of the dome. And that commitment to me has been amazing, and also
Mhm,
to put Palestine in context of Japanese and also Hiroshima movements, that has really been essential as well for us to kind of
mhm,
fully understand, especially in Hiroshima, and interacting with the city and petitioning the city and trying to call for a ceasefire. And now we're trying to basically have Hiroshima cancel their invitation to Israel to come to the August 6th peace memorial ceremony, which is the commemoration
mhm.
day of the bomb in August. So, some of our team is working on how to approach the city with that kind of
Yeah.
demand. And, our professors have been really supportive of just strategizing. I don't know if you guys have any professor. I'm sure you guys have some professors that have come down to support what you guys do too.
Yeah,
And it is hard though. It is hard in terms
100%.
of for people's careers
Mhm.
um,
Yeah,
to put yourself into that position. So that's also a
yeah.
risk. Although I do feel like we have a certain sense of freedom of speech that is different. Like even in America, it's like we have this freedom of speech
Mhm,
thing, but actually you're just going to get your ass kicked by the cops if you exercise it. And so in Japan, they always try to remind me that, like, actually, we can say what we need to say. We're not going to be punished for what we need to say. It's just that most
true.
people have a hard time saying it because
Mhm,
of the social dynamics of everything. So maybe we could talk a little bit about the media and how it's also been
mhm.
reported in Japan. And yeah, just anything you have to share in terms of what this looks like to
Mm,
most Japanese people through NHK and through the different
mhm.
newspapers and stuff that you've been interacting with too.
Yeah. The media has been quite interesting because I feel like in the beginning, especially, you know, uh, Palestine and what's happening in Palestine was kind of like I don't want to say the trending thing, but it was what every news outlet was talking about. And Japan wasn't an exception. A lot of media in the beginning were at our protests, were showing up, were trying to find Palestinians, trying to cover things, trying to be involved. But when you actually look at the intention behind why they're doing these programs and why they want to tell these stories, it honestly a lot of times felt like it was more for views and ratings because that
Mm,
was what was being talked about in the world,
mm, mm,
rather
mm.
than genuinely about sharing a person's struggle or story or experience. And the media does exactly the same as US media. I mean, I feel like a lot of the Western media kind of feed off of the same script. It's just passed down, and in
Mm.
Japan, it's just translated in Japanese. That's really the only difference. I'm not
ね。
even joking. Hontani, it is
本
like,
当に。
it's like Israel Hamas. That's the title of NHK and these major broadcasters in
う
Japan. And
ん、
NHK is the biggest one, so I use them as an example. um it's Israel versus Hamas. It's a battle. It's not they didn't come and invade and murder people. No, it's a battle. It's a war. It's a struggle for peace, not for liberation. Like,
う
this
ん、う
is
ん、うん。
how the media puts things into perspective here in Japan. It's Israel versus Hamas. It's a conflict. And it's very frustrating to deal with. It's very, very frustrating. But because, I mean, news is a huge source in Japan. I mean, obviously, social media has played a big role, but because of the older population and the aging population, a lot of people still are listening to mainstream news and radio and those and reading newspapers and so like we have to deal with these news outlets if we want our story and our side to also be vocalized and out there to people. So we were trying to do as many things with NHK, with Asahi Shimbun, with anyone that wanted to cover about Palestine, to be honest. And so in the beginning, we did have some sort of coverage, I would say, some sort of, yeah, like people were kind of excited to tell the story of Palestinians in Japan and stuff. And over time, it just decreased. And now we have to like almost beg them to come to our events, although we always invite them, but they don't show up. And I don't know if it's for them, like they've already moved on. There's other stories to tell. They feel like it's not as important. I'm not sure what it is. Maybe like because of the whole political aspect of things, they choose to just cover about the poor turtles somewhere rather than, you know, talk about Palestine.
Oh my
Which
God.
is fair, you know, which is fair. Talk about the turtles, but also talk about Palestine and find some time
Yeah.
to, you know, broadcast 5-10 minutes for Palestine. So it's been hard to deal with that aspect of the media and not having coverage and having to beg for coverage. And yeah, we just resulted to creating our own, and we have some field producers on the team that, you know, we've all met each other and found our skills and what we can
Nice, nice.
contribute. And some people are amazing film producers, and they've just, yeah, like put a team together and they come to our protests and they film and make incredible videos. Shout out to Choose Life Project. I mean, honestly,
Here.
like they're amazing. And yeah, we have to have an alternate media agency almost, just
Yeah.
to get
Yeah.
our actions out there and our voices heard. And but for us, it's like if that's what we need to do, then that's what we're going to do, you know.
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
that's our option, we're gonna do it. So
Yeah, I mean, and you guys are at a place where you know, I think the advantage of Tokyo is that there are so many amazing creative people there. You guys have amazing graphic designers, you have amazing you know, just
yeah.
community building people, you know, from all of the artistic
Yeah.
perspectives. You can have good coverage visually because you have a ton of great filmmakers and photographers and stuff
Hmm.
like that too. So I think that's like, I think for the social media aspect of it, that has, you guys have made such beautiful footage of what you've done. And yeah, the unfortunately the media in Japan is, it's frustrating, right? Like I've been interviewed like you a gazillion times for a gazillion newspaper articles, and they will never say the word apartheid, won't say the word genocide.
Ever.
Literally, you can like only say if you literally in your interview, and I've had to do this too, where I'm like, okay, I'm not gonna say anything but end the occupation, you know, end Israeli apartheid, and they still are like, Rebecca is really wants peace for for
Yeah.
Israel. They don't even put it in Palestine.
Yeah, you're like, wait, what?
You're like, that's not
What?
what I
That's so true.
said.
It's so
The
true.
peace
And it's annoying
washing.
because
Oh my
they
God.
get you to talk about all these things and they get you to
Oh
answer
my
all
God.
these questions. And then they're like, okay, yeah, I'm just gonna take out the part where you talked about like thanking people who come to the protest. I'm like, how is that what you got out of, you took an hour of my time and that's what you decided to show? Like, are you
Okay.
serious?
Well, which is why it's awesome that we get to even talk about this here on Counterpunch. Shout out to Joshua
Yeah.
Frank and
Shout out.
Eric, to all the folks at Counterpunch for doing the coverage or at least letting us talk about it. Geez, because it
Yes.
is hard. It is hard in Japan to get our actual voices to come through. And you know, any
Yeah.
coverage, there was an NHK story that went on about me, and I watched like the English version. And yeah, it's just like they love to also portray, and I've seen them do this to other activists, portray especially young foreign activists it portray us as like charity cases. I think that was one thing that you mentioned in the beginning in terms of how people view
Mhm.
Palestine. And I don't know if it's just that kind of, I don't know what it is, just to make us look like sad and pathetic or something.
Mhm.
They really, I don't know if it's like intentionally just to make it look that way so kind of people feel bad for you. I feel like there's a lot of sense of like people feeling
Yes.
like, oh, that's really sad. Oh, they're really suffering from this thing that's
Yeah.
happening so far away. And oh, it's too bad we can't do anything about it. But I guess I can donate 1,000 N, which is like $7 to $8, and like feel better about myself afterwards. So there's a lot of that kind of charity
Mhm.
case culture that
Yes.
I feel like a lot of us have been kind of pigeonholed into, instead of
Mhm.
recognizing the intense political, intellectual, cultural depth of what this movement is really bringing out
So true.
in people, and demonstrating to, I mean, worldwide, but in particular in the Japanese context. So maybe we can, before we finish up, we can just talk a little bit about how this movement has crossed over with other movements in Japan. Like, how are you seeing this as an intersectional, how is Palestine showing Japan, and how is Japan in response, the Japanese activism that does exist here? How is this movement building upon other intersectional issues in Japan, and
Mhm.
how have you seen that played out in Tokyo?
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting because, Tokyo is a massive city, so all sorts of people here from all sorts of backgrounds, religions, all sorts of beliefs and identities. It's just like really, really diverse, which is amazing. And I think one of the most amazing things for me as a Palestinian, that I've been able to observe, and I've been blessed to have this feeling and to see this, is really seeing the intersectionality of all these communities
Mhm.
come together for Palestine. And that just means so much to me as a Palestinian, because I know that a lot of these communities don't agree on all the same things. They probably don't
Mm,
see the world all in the same lens with the same way of life, but all of these communities agree that Palestine is a human issue and that we should
mm,
all be concerned when there is a genocide. And if this genocide is allowed in Palestine, who knows where else it could be,
mm.
exported to, and where
Yes.
Israel also, they export these tools of oppression, and so just to see the all of these different communities come together and stand for Palestine has just been absolutely beautiful. I mean, you really have like people from all sorts. We have a lot of people from the LGBTQ plus community. We have a lot of people that are, climate activists or
Mm,
feminists, or are anti-war, or, anti-nukes, or,
mhm, mhm,
pro-immigration. Like there's just people from all sorts of beliefs and from all walks of life, honestly. But all of them have come together for Palestine, and have all expressed that, we should all care about this, and we should all fight for the liberation of Palestine.
mm,
And it's just really beautiful to see, all these communities come together, and a lot of these communities that might not face the exact same issues, but they do have a lot of similar struggles, or let's say, a lot of factors that kind of tie them together. So to see that, to see all of them there, in the same space, in the same safe space as well, it's just like so extraordinary. Honestly, it's been so amazing to feel this. It's been, and it's just created such a inclusive space as well, and community for people, that when they come and they see us and they see the community, they feel welcomed, because they see that there's people with all sorts of beliefs, and people from all over the world that are part of this and that are standing for this, so they feel like they can also join in comfortably.
mm. Yeah, I think that's some of the most beautiful parts of how Hiroshima feels too. In particular, are the home of the anti-nuclear movement worldwide. So we've had a lot of, folks who are, of course, just anti-war, anti-weapons, anti-nuclear specifically. Those people have been quite supportive. We also have the punk and DIY music community that has been
Mm-hmm.
also in Tokyo,
Right.
super,
Mm-hmm.
super down. And these are people
Yeah.
who are, you know, already have a history of being anti-establishment or, anti-government. They're anarchists, they're punks, they're people making music. And that has been really, for Hiroshima, a really foundational part of our
Yeah.
community. So we want to shout out to all of the folks who have been making music and cultural movement for Palestine, all the artists. This has been such a heartful
Yeah.
contribution to, I think, the worldwide movement, are all of the artists and the people that we've been exchanging with worldwide. I want to also mention that, well, we had a couple of really beautiful artist actions, which one was the Tears for Palestine action, which is kind of how we met in Tokyo,
Mm-hmm.
is when I was
Yeah.
helping out with that action, and Zach, and that action that went really worldwide. And then
Mm-hmm.
also I want to plug Kazuhito Seki, who's also an artist who is spray
Mm-hmm.
painting a Free Gaza stencil around Tokyo and who is still in jail for
Yeah.
that action, and who is kind of over 30 days in prison without charge or
Yeah.
trial, which, we are trying to free our friend who's also an artist to get out of prison for just amplifying the words Free Gaza throughout Tokyo. So, there's so many things we could talk about with Japan, and that we really only could touch the
Mm.
surface in terms of this. But I do want to plug Kazuhito's Change.org petition, which if you guys can search, maybe I can put this in the notes of the show for Counterpunch. But Hanin, I want to ask you if there's any other movement, petitions, actions. How can people support the Japan for Palestine movement? How can people support
Mm-hmm.
you guys? Maybe you want to plug the fundraisers that you're already doing. Yeah, and then we can wrap it up.
Yeah. Perfect. I mean, obviously there's so many different things that people can do, and the first thing we always talk about is centralizing Palestinians' voices, and I think we've really done a great job at engraving that mentality here in Japan, because I mean, this is like in the history of Palestine, this has always been a very prevalent thing where the Palestinian cause comes up and everybody is so quick to give their opinion about Palestine and what should happen and what's happening, but n- a lot of times Palestinians are forgotten in that
Mm, mm,
in that equation. So I think we've really drilled it in that you should be vocalizing Palestinian voices and what they're saying, especially Palestinians on the ground, and sharing what they're going through. That's obviously like huge, huge, huge part of how the movement has even gotten this big today. So just maintaining that's super important. But in Japan, I mean, we're doing a lot of petitions towards like Panic. We had a petition, so like keep your eye out for things like that that would be working on to target certain companies. And yeah, I think we even do petitions for the government sometimes as well. We had a petition for the Judo Association for those judo Zionists that tried to that literally attacked our protests. I mean, alhamdulillah, nothing got too physical, but like they came in and very entitled and classic Zionist behavior, tried to threaten us and attack. So they're judo Olympians, so we have a petition to ban them from the Olympics, ban Israel from the Olympics,
mm, mm,
and hopefully ban Israel from all cultural games and conferences, etc.
mm, mm.
But yeah, so really looking out for those petitions, I would say is a huge way to help us here in Japan, because we really have to try hard for each signature we get, let's say. And
We do, we do.
but but that's easy to get, for like people can do that all over the world. People in the States can help us with that, really amplifying also like things that we're doing here, or just even collaborating with us. We've done, as you said, Tears for Palestine, in the States, in Hawaii, in San Francisco, in front of the White House. So doing those sorts of actions with us, I mean, it just, the struggle really transcends borders. So if we
Mm,
can work together and
yeah.
really accomplish these amazing things together. So yeah, those are like some things people can do to support. And even within Japan, if you're in Japan, show up,
Come
come,
see us.
join the community, join the
よろしくお願い
community.
し
We'd
ま
love for
す。
you to be there. 本当に would love.
どう
People tell
ぞ。
me like, oh, like I see you guys and I want to say hi. Or, please come say
う
hi,
ん。
join.
うん。
Like we're really all friendly and welcoming, and we all care. And I think at the end of the day,
Yes.
when you feel like there's no hope left in society,
うん。
it's this community that gives you a sense of purpose, and this community that gives you a sense of hope in this cruel world that we are
う
living
ん。
in. Hontani, like if it wasn't for this community, I
Yeah.
personally don't know where I would be and how I would be feeling today. So yeah, join and be with these passionate people. We're not extreme, we're passionate, we care,
う
we
ん。
want a peaceful world more than these people who are just walking and doing nothing about it. So yeah, join us and come plan or contribute in any way you can. We're always happy to have people pass by. And if people are visiting Japan, also pass and join us. We've had so many tourists,
Yes.
and that's been an amazing way for us to build. We built amazing connections with people all over the world, just from that as well. So yeah, stop by, say hi, message us as well.
Message us. Yeah, where can people find you? What are some of the, are you guys tweeting? Are you on Instagram? Where can people find you?
Yeah. Yeah, so we're on Instagram. Me personally, Hanin JP, and Palestinians of Japan is the organization that we are like posting under at times. But I do want to give also like a shout out to Amo Palestine and No Detention, Yes Life, Watermelon
Mhm.
Alliance, all these groups within our area that are doing so much for Palestine here. Honestly, major shout out to them. So many people doing so many things. We can't even give everybody credit, but really, to everybody mobilizing, お疲れ。
お
本当にお
疲れ。
疲れ。
お疲
and
れ。
頑張ろう。Let's do this.
頑張ろう. Yeah, I'd love to shout out the folks in Hokkaido and Sapporo, led
Yeah,
by doctors who are doing some work. We have folks in
yeah.
Okinawa who are organizing. Kansai area, shout out to Kyoto and the folks, amazing artists and activists in Kyoto, Osaka, Fukuoka, ね、長崎県、Nagasaki, the city, Shizuoka, Kanazawa, we have
神奈川。
folks, Kanagawa, どこでもね, we really all over
うん。
Japan. And I
Mhm.
also special shout out to all of the people who are out in the inaka, out in the rural communities. We have people in Shobara, in Hiroshima, in Fukuoka, no, 違う, Fukuyama, Okayama, also small cities in
Ah,
Hiroshima,
nice.
also
Yeah,
Yamaguchi-ken, Tottori, these are like very, very rural
that's true.
areas of Japan. We've had people come to Hiroshima from these places and who are doing their own things within their communities
Mhm.
there, in high schools and community centers. It's just
That's
incredible
so true.
how much is happening outside of the main center cities, and
Mhm.
also, of course, all of the bigger cities where people are
So
mobilizing,
true.
and there's something happening every day in Japan. So we just,
Mhm.
it's awesome. I'm so happy to do this with you, Janine, as
Me
as
too.
to just let people really know the just width and breadth of the movement in
Mhm.
Japan, how unique it is,
Mhm.
and how against a lot of the difficulties that we do experience, the beauty
Yeah.
the real like 本当に綺麗なやつ. Like it's just a beautiful thing what's been
It
happening.
is.
So I know a lot of people come through Tokyo. If you're coming to Osaka or Kyoto, or if you're coming all the way down to Hiroshima, please hit us up. We're also the at Hiroshima Palestine Vigil, and yeah, we're looking forward to seeing anyone who's in Japan. And please follow us, listen to our voices coming out here, and please share. And yeah, we're looking forward to meeting you guys and keeping the collaboration going. So yeah, お疲れ、お疲れ様でした.
Otsukare,
Thanks for all your hard work,
otsukare-sama.
Hanin. And yeah, 頑張
Oh, thank you.
ろう.
Thank you, Rebecca. Honestly, I wish someone could just could have just been filming everybody moving around the last like 7 months and all the things that have
Oh my
happened,
God.
because I feel like if we had a moment to just stop and watch everything, all the moving pieces, like it's honestly amazing. But because we
Amazing.
don't have time to stop and reflect much and look back and kind of tie those pieces together, like we can't touch upon everything. But honestly, like it's incredible, and I'm just like so amazed by the perseverance and the stamina of people in this community. And I just hope that we keep going until liberation, and we
Yo.
continue to fight for justice for all people all over the world. So
Mm, mm.
yeah, hopefully we get
Yeah,
there
we're
one day.
doing it. We're doing it.
We're
Yeah.
doing it.
So this we're doing this all for the people of Palestine. We're doing this for the
Mhm.
land. We're doing this for our brothers and sisters in the diaspora. So yeah, from Nihon to Palestina. 頑張りましょ
Yes,
う.
頑張りましょう。
いやー、ありがとうございました。お疲れ様
ありがとうござい
です。
ます。お疲れ
Bye
様。
everyone.